Listen to me very carefully, because what just happened in Sacramento, California, is not an agricultural news story. It is not a corporate restructuring announcement, and it is absolutely not something that only matters to almond farmers and food cooperative workers in the Central Valley. The CEO of Blue Diamond Growers, a $1.59 billion agricultural cooperative that was founded by 11 broke California almond farmers in 1910, that has operated out of the same Sacramento plant for 115 years, that invented half the technology the global almond industry runs on, that put California almonds on shelves in 80 countries across 5 continents, walked into a meeting room on June 6, 2025, looked at 600 workers whose families have given generations to that plant, and told them, "It is over." His exact words about California: "Too costly and inefficient. I am Omar Speaks." And the state that just priced out its own 115-year agricultural icon is running the same math on your city right now. This channel exists to follow the money that politicians bury in press releases and connect the economic dots that the mainstream media leaves deliberately scattered. What I am about to break down for you is the kind of fiscal and economic intelligence that directly affects your job, your real estate, your tax bill, and your financial future. And I'm giving it to you completely free. The only price is a subscription and your refusal to stay uninformed. Hit that subscribe button right now, because the pattern destroying California is already operating in your state, and the people running it are counting on you not noticing until it is too late. To understand why the Blue Diamond closure landed like a bomb across California's agricultural and business communities, you need to understand what Blue Diamond Growers actually is, because the media is going to reduce this story to a single headline about one plant closing and one CEO making a balance sheet decision. And that reduction is a deliberate insult to 115 years of American agricultural history. Blue Diamond was not built by venture capitalists with a pitch deck and a Silicon Valley network. It was built in 1910 by 11 California almond farming families who were tired of middlemen consuming the profits, and decided to band together in Sacramento, because that was where the railroads met, the orchards. They scraped together enough capital to build a small packing house at the rail yards. By 1915, they had a name and a symbol, the Blue Diamond, stamped on every single box they shipped. Over the following century, those 11 families grew into 3,000 farming families, representing half of every almond grower in the state of California. Sons farmed beside fathers. Daughters ran operations their grandmothers had built. The cooperative invented the first commercial almond sheller, the first size grader, the first continuous blanching line, the first electronic sorting machines, the first commercial slivering and dicing equipment. They opened export markets in over 80 countries. They put California almonds on shelves in Japan, the United Kingdom, South Korea, Brazil, and China. Almond Breeze became the #1 almond milk in the United States, South Korea, Thailand, Brazil, and South Africa simultaneously. By 2021, the cooperative was generating $1.59 billion in annual revenue. Blue Diamond Snack Almonds owns more than half the entire United States snack almond market. This is not a company that grew because of government programs or financial engineering. This is a company that grew because 11 farming families in 1910 decided that if they worked together and refused to quit, they could build something that would feed the world. And the state of California just made it financially impossible for that company to keep its founding plant open. The numbers do not lie. They never have. They never will. Now, let me give you the precise sequence of what happened on June 6, 2025, because the details of how this closure unfolded reveal something far more damaging than a single corporate announcement. CEO Kai Bachman, who took the top job at Blue Diamond in January 2023 after building his career and consolidating operations at Saputo, the Montreal-based dairy giant, and McCain Foods, arriving in California with a resume built explicitly on moving production to lower-cost geographies, walked into the company's 53-acre Midtown Sacramento plant. The same plant Blue Diamond has operated out of since 1914. 111 years of continuous operation on that site, and he told the people working the line that the facility was closing. 600 jobs phased out over the next 18 to 24 months. The first round of layoffs beginning in September 2025, the second round arriving in March 2026, the third in September 2026, the 53-acre site going up for sale. Operations consolidating to existing Blue Diamond plants in Turlock and Ceres, both located deep in the Central Valley, away from the state capital and its cost structure. Bachmann's public statement did not sugarcoat the reason. He said directly, and I am paraphrasing his documented words, that the challenge of running a plant from these historical buildings has become too costly and inefficient. That is CEO language for the math on a 115-year facility in Sacramento has finally and completely collapsed. He called it streamlining. He called it putting cooperative grower members first. He even thanked the Sacramento team for the work ethic and the drive that built Blue Diamond into what it is today, before informing them that their work ethic was now going to be applied somewhere else. Now put yourself in the shoes of a Sacramento plant worker who has been on the Blue Diamond line for 30 years, a packed almond since the 90s. Your children went to Sacramento schools. Your mortgage is built around this paycheck. Your health care is built around this paycheck. The plant has been in your neighborhood longer than you have been alive. You have an 18-month window before the line. Your work goes permanently dark. Some workers will receive relocation offers to Turlock or Ceres, 100 miles south, 2 hours of new commute, or a sold house and uprooted family. Some will get severance. Most will get a layoff notice and a job placement pamphlet. Multiply that across 600 families in Sacramento, then multiply it across 3,000 grower families whose relationship with their founding cooperative just fundamentally changed because the state capital became too expensive for their own cooperative to operate in. Stephen Gordon, who owns Cadena Farm, his grandfather opened that farm in 1971. 54 years of selling almonds to Blue Diamond. 3 full generations told reporters after the announcement that the connection between buyer and farmer is going to change dramatically. His exact words were that suddenly the backdrop has changed. The landscape has changed around them. The growers did not make California unaffordable. The workers did not make California unaffordable. They just live with what the political class built. I do not care about your feelings about California politics. I care about what this costs real families in real numbers. And the real number is 600 jobs, 3,000 farming relationships, 115 years of institutional knowledge, and a 53-acre Sacramento manufacturing site that a mayor immediately described as a real estate opportunity rather than an economic catastrophe. Stop being a victim of a political class that frames every departure as a development opportunity rather than as the documented consequence of their own fiscal decisions. Here's the structural economic data that every politician in Sacramento is hoping you never sit down and read in its entirety, because when you see all the numbers together in sequence, the policy failure is so complete and so mathematically documented that no press release can cover it. California's corporate income tax rate sits at 8.84%. Its personal income tax rate tops out at 13.3%, the highest personal income tax rate of any state in the entire United States. The Tax Foundation places California near the very bottom of its state business tax climate index every single year, citing what it describes as high tax rates with an uncompetitive tax structure. Chief Executive Magazine has ranked California dead last on its best and worst states for business list for 14 consecutive years, not 3 years, not 7, 14 years in a row. And the consequences of that sustained uncompetitiveness are now documented, measurable, and accelerating. Blue Diamond is not leaving alone. Chevron departed California after 145 years of headquarters presence, moving to Houston. Tesla relocated to Texas. Oracle moved to Texas. Charles Schwab moved to Texas. Hewlett-Packard Enterprise relocated. Palantir relocated. Toyota moved its North American headquarters. And according to the Public Policy Institute of California, California's own nonpartisan research organization, 3% of all California businesses relocated out of state in 2025 alone. 3% in a single year. Now here's the number that should make every Californian and every person in a high-tax state reading this sit up straight. California's nonpartisan Legislative Analyst's Office just published its fiscal outlook. For 2026 to 2027, the structural deficit is $18 billion. $18 billion in a single fiscal year. And here is what makes that number genuinely alarming. State revenue is currently running approximately $9 billion ahead of what the budget anticipated. California is collecting more money than projected, and the structural deficit is still $18 billion. The math does not work. The state general fund is approximately 17% dependent on personal income tax receipts, the majority of which come from high-income earners, the same high-income earners who are now relocating to Texas, Tennessee, and Florida at a documented, measurable, IRS trackable rate. The 2025 California legislative session ended with lawmakers having proposed more than $16 billion in additional taxes and fees, according to the California Taxpayers Association. And layered on top of all of it, California is still carrying approximately $20 billion in outstanding federal unemployment insurance loans taken during the COVID period, which the federal government recovers automatically by raising employer payroll taxes, an additional $126 per employee in 2025 alone, climbing toward over $400 per worker by the end of the decade. Every business operating in California pays that surcharge, including the ones still deciding whether the numbers justify staying. You are broke, and you do not even know it. Because if you live in California or any state running this identical fiscal playbook, your tax environment is silently and systematically consuming the economic productive capacity of the region you depend on for your job, your property value, and your financial stability. Now let me describe the death spiral clearly, because this is not unique to California, and the pattern is operating simultaneously in New York, Illinois, New Jersey, and Massachusetts right now. And if you live in any of those states, this is your future, arriving early. The spiral runs like this. A state builds a generous public spending architecture during periods of economic growth, generous public employee pensions, expansive social programs, large government payrolls. When revenue slows, rather than reducing spending commitments that have become politically impossible to cut, the state raises taxes on its highest-earning residents and its most profitable businesses to cover the gap. The immediate response from high earners and high-profit businesses is to evaluate whether the after-tax return on operating in that state justifies the premium cost versus the growing list of lower tax alternatives. Some leave. Tax base shrinks. Revenue falls short of projections despite the rate increase because the rate increase accelerated the departures it was designed to fund. The deficit grows. The legislature proposes more taxes to cover the larger deficit. More businesses and high earners accelerate departure calculations. The tax base shrinks further. The deficit grows further. The spiral does not reverse because the political class running it cannot acknowledge that the policy is producing the outcome, because acknowledging that would require them to reduce the spending commitments that constitute their political coalition's expectations. So instead, they produce marketing campaigns, economic rankings based on total GDP rather than growth trajectory, and statements about being the fourth or fifth largest economy in the world, statistics that describe the size of what was built over decades, not the direction of what is being built right now. Governor Gavin Newsom has spent years publicly dismissing the documented corporate exodus, even as U-Haul's annual data consistently shows more Californians renting one-way trucks to leave the big state than residents of any other state in the country. Sacramento Mayor Kevin McCarty's official response to Blue Diamond's departure thanked the cooperative for 115 years of partnership and then immediately pivoted to describing the 53-acre plant site as a real estate opportunity. A 115-year agricultural icon built by 11 farming families exits the city that incubated it and the mayor. His first public instinct is to discuss the development potential of the land it leaves behind. That is not leadership. That is a political class so disconnected from the economic consequences of its own decisions that it cannot identify a catastrophe when it is standing in the room announcing its departure. 5 high-tax states, California, New York, Illinois, New Jersey, and Massachusetts, have experienced a combined net outmigration of approximately 3.7 million residents since 2022, according to census data. 3.7 million people voted with their moving trucks. The numbers do not lie. Now let me bring this directly to your money, your decisions, and the financial intelligence you need to act on right now. Because information without a financial action plan is just expensive frustration, and I refuse to waste your time with frustration. The Blue Diamond departure is not an isolated agricultural story. It is a data point in a documented, accelerating pattern of productive economic capacity, jobs, tax revenue, institutional knowledge, supply chain infrastructure, and generational business relationships migrating from high-cost, high-tax, high-regulation jurisdictions to lower-cost, competitive alternatives. And that migration has direct, measurable consequences for the financial position of every person whose income, real estate, or investment portfolio is concentrated in a state running the California fiscal playbook. If your job is in a California-based company or industry that is actively evaluating its cost structure against lower tax alternatives, you need to be asking honestly whether your employment stability is dependent on a location decision that the math may be moving against. If your real estate is in Sacramento, in San Francisco, in Los Angeles, in any California market where the productive employer base that supports property values is systematically shrinking, you need to be calculating whether the trajectory of that market over the next decade reflects the fundamentals of a growing, competitive economy or the fundamentals of a shrinking tax base and an accelerating exodus of the employers that drive housing demand. If your investment portfolio has significant California exposure, California municipal bonds, California real estate investment trusts, California-based businesses in industries with location flexibility, you need to be stress testing those positions against an $18 billion structural deficit with no credible plan for reduction and a regulatory environment ranked dead last in the country for business competitiveness for 14 consecutive years. Cash is trash in an inflationary environment, but capital concentrated in a jurisdiction whose economic trajectory is pointed consistently downward is doubly at risk, eroded by inflation on one side and by the systematic reduction of the economic productive capacity that underlies your asset values. On the other, the winners in this environment are the people who read the data, understand the trajectory, and make rational allocation decisions based on where productive economic capacity is growing rather than where it is contracting. The losers are the people who treat the Blue Diamond closure, the Chevron departure, the Tesla relocation, and the $18 billion deficit as individual unrelated events rather than as the consistent, documented output of a single policy trajectory that has been running for 14 years and shows no structural signs of reversing. I do not care about your feelings about California. I care about your money, and your money needs you to see this pattern clearly and make decisions accordingly. Let me close with the full weight of this story assembled because I want you to carry it precisely. 11 California almond farming families in 1910, tired of middlemen consuming their profits, built a packing house at the Sacramento rail yards with scraped-together capital and a name stamped on every box, Blue Diamond. Over 115 years, 3,000 farming families, $1.59 billion in annual revenue. 80 countries, half the United States snack almond market, the #1 almond milk brand on 4 continents. And on June 6, 2025, a CEO with a global consolidation resume walked into the founding plant and told 600 families that California had become too costly and inefficient to justify staying. The governor said nothing of substance. The mayor talked about real estate, and the state that made it happen is now $18 billion in the red, with legislators proposing $16 billion more in new taxes on the businesses still standing inside its borders. So I'm asking you directly right now, are you going to be a winner who reads this data, understands the fiscal trajectory, makes intelligent decisions about where your money is deployed and where your career and real estate are concentrated, and positions yourself ahead of the economic momentum that is clearly and measurably moving away from high-tax states running the California playbook? Or are you going to be a loser who watches this video, feels informed for 20 minutes, and then does exactly what you did yesterday while the pattern accelerates around you? Stop being a victim of an economic environment you can see clearly and choose to ignore. The numbers do not lie. 11 farmers built a global empire from a Sacramento packing house. One governor's tax policy finished 115 years of hard work survived. Subscribe. Share this. Tell me in the comments whether you think California can reverse this or whether the exodus is now permanent. The receipts always tell the real story.